half in the bag.
Moose is in the house. Moose is in the house.
Hey Mike, did you see Martin Scorsese is trending on Twitter?
Oh no, we lost Marty?
Oh no, he's still alive, but people are very upset with him.
Why?
For being absolutely right about everything.
Oh, Marty, we've been saying for years that movies are now theme park rides. Is that what all this 3D shit is going to turn movies into? Like theme park rides? You ride it, you sit in a little car, and it goes slowly through the kitchen.
Look, Mike, if I'm going to trust anyone's opinion on quality film, it's not going to be Martin Scorsese. It's going to be some guy that claims he has an emotional connection to Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Mm-hmm. Trust the Twitter mob, Jay.
Always trust the Twitter mob. Speaking of which,
yes.
Let's talk about Joker.
My mother always tells me to smile and put on a happy face.
Spooky clowns scare me! Joker, a film so controversial, Joaquin Phoenix didn't know how to answer a question in an interview and left for 2 hours. That's where we should start before we get into the discussion is the hot button politics.
Well, that's the interesting thing, more interesting than the movie. I don't know how you feel about this movie. We haven't talked about it yet, but...
Can we call this time we live in the age of reactions?
Yes, very reactionary. And that's, as someone that grew up a horror fan, it's weird to me, like, because that's what you always heard. There's the argument that, like, horror films, they're going to turn you into a violent psychopath.
This guy is, to my way of thinking, a vicarious sex criminal. He has very antisocial attitudes. I felt creepy sitting there.
Or before that, you had, like, Tipper Gore and her fight against music, the evils of music.
We have always talked about the positive aspects of the music industry, but of course, the highlight has been on the excesses that have been allowed to develop as we have tried to focus our concern on those excesses.
Satanic Panic and...
Satanic Panic, all that stuff, and it's still happening to this day. People are still trying to blame movies on the world's problems and not people.
Movies and video games.
Movies and video games has been a hot button issue forever as well.
People have been crazy since the dawn of time.
That's true. That's true.
1 out of every 100 people is crazy and will stab you or shoot at you.
Well, that's
regardless of what they're exposed to.
Well, that's the connection with this movie. Is obviously people are thinking of the shooting that happened in Aurora, even though that was mishandled, and they were saying that the guy went there dressed as the Joker, but he didn't. He just happened to have dyed red hair.
Yeah, I think it was a police officer who misspoke and said he was the Joker.
Yeah,
but it happened during a Batman movie. But I think he said he just picked that movie because it was an opening weekend and it was crowded.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Well, it's like the biggest movie of all time.
He wasn't trying to be the Joker, and then so
it wasn't a statement. Yeah,
you know, it gets kind of like twisted up in the lens of the media.
Yeah, but that's what's been interesting seeing the lead up to this movie is people that hadn't seen the movie saying this movie is going to embolden white terrorism, or this movie is going to empower incels and all this stuff. And now the movie's out, and the movie is about the importance of mental health care and classism. And now all these people that were whipped up into a frenzy look like complete buffoons. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, well, your politics start to become confused here because, they're saying it's going to embolden angry white incels, which is usually, I think, attributed to, like, your right-wing gun-toting nutjob, because incel, I didn't know this for the longest time, involuntarily celibate.
Yes.
That's what an incel is.
People that are very angry at women and angry at the world for mistreating them for the things they deserve.
Right.
Which has zero to do with this movie.
No, it's more of it leans the other way where it's anti. I saw many signs people holding Thomas Wayne as a fascist, and so clearly those like protests with the clown masks were very similar to a lot of the protesting, like remember the 1%.
It starts. Well, that's if we're going to get into
Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah,
that's it.
If we're going to get into the movie, we should talk about
counterculture protests.
Yeah. But the movie to me feels like it's very sloppy when it comes to all that stuff.
Yeah, it's vague.
It's vague. It's confusing. It feels like a teenage anarchist that knows he's supposed to be angry but doesn't really understand the things he's supposed to be angry about. The movie reminded me a lot, like it's directed by Todd Phillips, who primarily has done comedy.
Yes.
He did all the Hangover movies, and my reaction to this movie is very similar to my reaction to those, which is that it's sloppy, broad, and lacking any ounce of cleverness.
I kind of did a 180 on this halfway through.
Okay, I'm going to say similar. The final act of this movie I liked.
Yes.
But the rest of it felt like baby's first Taxi Driver.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I had that switch, is because I knew Todd Phillips directed this. And so we had seen I think we reviewed the third Hangover movie.
We did the second and the third.
We did.
Yeah, way back when.
And everyone went nutso for the Hangover. Hangover to me is sort of like funny in the way like Dane Cook was funny to those people that like that.
Yeah.
Where it's sort of like Hangover was okay. We can't find our friend after a wild party. None of us remember. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's frat boy humor.
There's a tiger. Oh my gosh.
So crazy.
This crazy thing happened. Now this crazy thing happened. And then so when you start Joker, it immediately starts with him like putting on his makeup. He works as a clown temp agency.
I guess they it's like the start of Taxi Driver, but they're assigning, you take this route, but they're clowns.
Hire a clown for the day. And
guess.
his first gig is holding a sign outside of a store that everything must go, which in itself is thematic.
Yes.
It's for the movie. If you didn't notice that, we notice things like that because we're film experts. Everything must go is the theme of the film, and then that's exactly what happens to the Joker.
It's true. It's true.
At the end of the film. So teenage kids take a sign, and then they hit him over the head with it, and so you're literally being hit over the head with like this obviousness. Like,
Yeah.
And then I'm in the first half. I'm like, am I supposed to care? I don't care about this character. Like, okay, all these, and then it's like, all these bad things are happening to him. People treat him like crap.
Should we go through the checklist?
There's
It's
a
like,
checklist.
the psychopath checklist in these movies. Lives with his mom, check. Right. Fired from his job, check.
But it's not just guy down on his luck. He has serious mental problems, and I think that's portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix really well. I think he's great in the movie.
I think he elevates the material because I think the script is, especially his character, is very underwritten.
He doesn't until that final act.
Spoilers.
I guess yeah.
We'll just get into spoilers.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
When he starts really ranting, because he doesn't rant. He's a very passive character. Everything happens to him, and until there's a transformation. And I think it was really well handled, like his slow demise and then rise to the Joker. Because I mean, what this is an origin movie.
Yeah.
That hasn't been that deeply developed. The Joker's always been mysterious. In '89 Batman, it was just like he's like a common street thug, and then he falls in a vat of acid. And he's crazy. And then Heath Ledger's Joker was always a mystery.
Which, in my opinion, is still the best Joker.
Sure.
Yeah, he tells, how did I get these scars? And he tells different stories to different people.
Yeah, and that moment when Heath Ledger lights that giant pile of money on fire is just so great because it's like, okay,
yeah,
this guy's a true anarchist.
Some men just want to watch the world burn, yeah.
Yeah, and but the Joker, to me, has always been crazy, but intelligently crazy, maniacal. He's an anarchist, but he's able to rally people to his cause. He's able to outsmart Batman. He can't physically fight Batman, so he has to have that level of intelligence in order to outwit him. And then that was the first half of this movie, me thinking like,
how's this guy going to do anything?
This guy's no match for Batman. He doesn't have all of his marbles.
Right.
But then the movie, and then also his love interest.
I saw this coming a mile away.
Well, I was stunned. Okay, spoilers. Spoilers. I didn't see the twist coming, but I didn't like that they were doing it because I was like, okay, there's this woman who lives on his floor, and I'm like, why are you even associating with this guy who's a creep.
Yeah, they're immediately friendly. She starts going, when his mom's in the hospital, she's there and she like kisses him on the head.
Right.
I think she's had like 3 lines of dialogue up until then. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, there's one moment that kind of gives it away when he kind of pushes open her door and he starts passionately kissing her and the door closes. And I'm like, because he has fantasy sequences in his head before then.
Yeah.
But
see, that was disappointing to me, because if they didn't establish earlier that he has delusions, and that was the first time we realized that, I think it would have been a bigger revelation.
Sure.
But it's like we get the revelation, oh, she was in his head all the time. Them hanging out was in his head all the time. And it's like, yeah, but we already know he's delusional.
Yeah.
It would have been, it had more impact if we didn't already see that.
The fact that those two were, that she was even giving him the time of day, was so unbelievable. But I thought it could happen in a dumb movie. Like they were going to be on a date and then they were going to get mugged and then the killer was going to kill her and that was going to make him even more crazy. Like, I thought that was a checklist, where it's like checklist. His therapist that he goes to, because he was in an insane asylum. The therapist gets her the public funding cut, so he can't go see the therapist anymore. So all these like hit you over the head, like all these bad things are happening to this character, and I thought that was going to be like the turning point.
She turns on him and then he flips out, or something.
She gets killed, and whatever.
I think the thing, because clearly, I don't want to keep bringing up like Taxi Driver and comparing this to Taxi Driver, but it's so clearly inspired by that.
Yeah.
And like to me, because I didn't even think of this as like a Joker movie for most of it. It feels like an existing script that they then kind of like reworked to be a Joker movie by adding in like Thomas Wayne and stuff. But the thing that makes like Travis Bickle scary is that he can function normally in society. He feels like a normal person. He woos Sybil Shepherd and it's believable, unlike him getting along with the girl in this movie. But then like he tries to take Sybil Shepherd on a date and he goes to a porno movie and he doesn't understand why she would be turned off by that or why she would be upset by that.
You know, I didn't know that you'd feel that way about this movie. I don't know much about movies, but if I had known...
what kind of movie you should go to?
Joaquin Phoenix's character is just sort of like, has mental problems from the beginning. So then there's really nowhere for his character to go for the rest of the movie.
Wrong.
Oh.
His character transforms into the Joker at the end, because I don't mind that he has mental issues. His mental issues are crippling to him. And I think, and that's where it started to get interesting to me, because most of the time I'm thinking, okay, he's a crazy guy. He gets beat up and life's down on him. Everything's bad happening.
He tries to do stand-up and he's terrible at it.
Now he's gonna put on this makeup and just start shooting people and become the Joker. But then we get that wonderful little story with, I love this actress. She was the mom on 6 Feet Under.
Oh yeah.
She was in lots of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I can't remember her name either, but I know what you're talking about.
She's a great actress, and I was pleasantly surprised to see her in this. She plays Arthur Fleck's mother.
Yeah.
Mother. And then we get this, she's writing letters to Thomas Wayne, and because she used to work for him. And then it turns out, and he goes and he investigates this. And I'm like, oh, we're getting something more is happening than just than the Hangover plot. Which is they got to find their friend.
They have to retrace all their steps to find their friend. And then that doesn't lead anywhere. And then they just say, oh, I think he's on the roof. And then that's how the movie ends. Again, when I say lack of cleverness.
Yes. But that's where the movie started to add layers to it.
It took a long time to get to that.
Oh, yeah. No, but it's fine, though, because he was crazy. And then, real quick, without getting too much into it, his mother thinks that she is also crazy.
Has delusions, yeah.
And imagine she adopted a son and worked for the Wayne company, Wayne Enterprises, but she thinks she had an affair with the elder Wayne. What's his name? Thomas Wayne, and that he's a love child and blah 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 blah. And then it turns out that it's almost like a Munchausen syndrome kind of situation, I think, because he's being medicated, and then he goes off his meds, and that to me was like kind of when he got set free, and he became because I was like, how is this guy going to be a criminal mastermind? But maybe he is underneath all that medication, And so
See, I wish
once
they
he
had built
finds
that
out,
up more, though.
They spent 2 hours building it.
No, they don't mention any, like, because they mention he goes to his psychiatrist, and she says we're cutting funding, and like they're clearly commenting on mental health care.
Yes.
And so I thought it was going to be an issue with like, oh, he can't afford his medication now or something, but nothing happens with that. And then just when his two clown buddies visit his apartment, he just says, oh, I stopped taking my medicine. And it was just like that.
Well, really a major plot point is when he shoots the three guys on the subway.
Yeah.
One of which who looked very suspiciously similar to one of the Trump sons.
Oh.
Clearly commenting on the wealth, kill the rich.
Well, that's another thing that felt muddled to me that we can get into.
That was a socialist slogan,
Yeah.
kill the rich during the Bolshevik Revolution.
I think that was on a newspaper headline in this movie too. Didn't it say something about kill the
Well,
rich?
it was questioning whether that was his motive.
Yeah.
And that's the comparison people are making, is this would be a rallying cry for the basement dwelling incel.
Which it's not. Yeah.
No, because those people are go out and just shoot people just to be awful. When you think about it, the Joker only killed anybody who was awful and deserved it.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't out just to, and even while all the chaos was going on, he's like, I'm not political.
He says that when he's on De
Many
Niro's
times he's
show.
like, I don't have a motive. I'm just crazy.
Yeah.
And he kills the three Wall Street dudes on the subway because they're being awful. They're throwing French fries at a lady, and
I think they're drunk.
They're drunk,
Yeah.
and then they start beating him up and kicking him, and rightly he defends himself. A little too much.
A little extreme, but
and then he kills the guy who gave him the gun, his fellow clown, ratted him out.
Yeah.
He let the little person go because he was nice to him. And then his mother, she lied to him his whole life and kept him medicated.
Mm-hmm.
After that, he's crazy.
It's
and he's the
classic
Joker.
sort of anti-hero stuff. But
Yeah.
going back to the three people that he kills on the train, I thought there was nothing before that scene to indicate that there was already some sort of revolution happening in Gotham, was there? There was nothing about because it starts, it kind of feels like, Occupy Wall Street, but that's after his shooting, right? It makes it seem like that's the inciting incident.
It is.
But that's such a bizarre stretch to me, that a clown killing three people on a train that happen to be rich businessmen, the idea that all of a sudden that inspires all the underbelly of the city, all the 99%ers to rise up. It felt very underdeveloped to me.
It's happened in history where an incident sparks a revolution, Jim.
Maybe if they had built up to it, sprinkle it in, grows and grows. It was immediately they cut to hundreds of people rallying.
They did establish it by saying constantly, the very first scene when he's putting on the makeup, it's the people on the news are talking about how there's garbage everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
There's a,
Well, you
there's
see
a
that.
garbage
You see-
strike. And, garbage men are in a union probably, so there's this sort of city funding issue.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, this world, he's saying to his therapist, he's like, everything's fucking awful, isn't it? And she's like, yeah. And so you could feel in all the scenes are all gross and ugly looking, and there's all these problems. And you could feel that, that hatred of the rich guy. It's the complete inverse of the Batman story.
Oh,
And
sure.
That's another thing I liked about it too, is that once you see Thomas Wayne as a villain to the common people.
Yeah.
He's rich. All these people are rich in their tuxedos, and it's like they hate the rich stuff. And they're the bad guys, and in inverse is Batman is the good people of Gotham. I've got to save them from those dirty criminals.
Right.
And you're taking that exact story and just polar inverting it.
Yeah.
And that's neat.
Well, then when you get to the end and Batman's entire motivation that we've been so familiar with,
Yeah.
we see it from another perspective. And that's the stuff I liked. It's a lot of the setups and the first hour and a half of the movie I had issues with. Because I feel they establish, the garbage strike and the cities, all that. I feel like showing protesters earlier, it just feels bizarre to me that the Joker's shooting three people on a train is what incites, because it's right after that we see all these protesters.
It's like the super riots are after he kills Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
There was some
And that
protests.
felt like a stretch to me as well.
Oh, well, it was a little over the top, but are you going to the protest? You're wearing that clown mask.
Yeah.
It seemed like a thing that was happening, but people weren't too concerned about it. I'm okay with that. You can't like build everything up perfectly.
I mean, you can. Plenty of movies have. I'm just saying that the storytelling in this was sloppy.
Is this a joke to you?
Once he became the Joker, though, that entire third act, him on the show, on De Niro's talk show, I loved all that. There's some slightly unintentional comedy when he's ranting and you see the little like Dr. Ruth type character, and she's just like sitting next to him on the couch.
The Joker to me in this was scary when he became the Joker.
He becomes that entire last scene where he's on the talk show was like genuinely tense.
So I thought it built up to it just fine. I was disappointed with the obvious setups, and I thought that's what it was going to be.
Yeah.
But once they involved the backstory of Arthur Fleck, his relationship with his mother, the family secrets, all that kind of stuff, it gave it some thickness that I didn't expect. I thought it was just going to be a guy who's insane, has life, shit on him, and so he decides to go revenge and shoot people and become Joker. I really expected that. So I think that's why I was pleasantly surprised, because I expected the hangover of Joker origin stories.
There's a pull quote for the poster.
Yes.
The hangover of Joker movies.
I expected that.
I know.
And it didn't quite give us that. And as far as an origin story, good.
I have no idea if this is based on anything real, but his whole like uncontrollable laughing.
Oh yeah.
I liked that, and I liked the scene. Did you notice the name of the comedy club? That's another obvious.
Again, John Wayne Gacy.
Call the comedy club Pogo's. But I think it's all just one shot where it starts on the other end of the room and it slowly goes towards him, and it's like he doesn't know when you're supposed to laugh.
Yes.
At a joke.
Right.
He's just like randomly starts laughing, and like I loved that moment.
Yeah. And he's writing down like what a crazy person would do.
Oh yeah,
He's
you see
writing-
his notes, and it's like the ramblings of a lunatic. Yeah.
And he's like, make funny about sexual stuff. People laugh at that.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't get humor. He worked as the clown. He fantasized about the Robert De Niro talk show.
Yeah.
And then it led to father issues. And him performing in front of people, the kid, and then that's sort of like at the end when the mob pulls him out of the cop car, saves him because he's like a superhero to them.
He's made it in his chosen line of work.
He killed a symbol
Yeah.
of the 1%, the famous talk show host.
Played well by Robert De Niro.
Sure.
It's always nice when he shows up in a movie and tries. Still happens sometimes.
But then they make him, he stands up on top of the cop car or whatever, and he
Starts dancing.
He's enjoying the spotlight.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what he wanted, and that I think that was played a part with the stand-up comedian. He wanted attention. He wanted to be an entertainer, and it was just all buried beneath layers and layers of crazy, which was all like set free at the end.
Yeah. I will say, even though I had issues with this movie, I liked the third act a lot. I thought the first part was kind of muddled, messy, but I applaud Warner Brothers, who we've had issues with recently, but I applaud them for making a movie that is like a big, wide release movie that is a stripped down, character-driven story. Even if it didn't completely work for me, more movies like this, please.
Do you mean specifically in the comic book realm, or
Just in general, we don't get movies like this. Like I would have liked this movie more if it wasn't connected to Batman, if it wasn't a Joker movie.
I think, in my opinion, the Kevin Feige Marvel universe under Disney, that's its own thing. I think this artsy DC, it should be the reboot of the entire DC universe. Start from scratch right here, Joker.
Well, we do have to point out that this is because we've complained so much about the Zack Snyder attempt at realistic Superman. This is not that at all. Those movies suck because they're so tone deaf, and because they try to still have the big, over-the-top, like headache-inducing action. And this movie is closer in line to like the Christopher Nolan stuff a little bit. It's not nearly as good. but it's definitely a lot like grimier, which is interesting. And I want to say this is like lower budget than a lot of these movies, which makes sense because there's not a lot of effects. But if Warner Brothers continue to go this route, like almost like the Blumhouse model, like keep the budgets low, give it to real filmmakers.
Yeah.
Although I feel weird calling Todd Phillips a real filmmaker, but
he did a good job though.
he had a vision. He had a vision for this movie. So if they continue with that, I mean, you know, it's good for an audience because you're seeing smaller scale movies. It's good for them because they cost less, so they can make more.
But I think this is a one and done situation, because how do you do this with Superman?
Well, that's the thing. And the minute you have
Wonder Woman
Batman show up, it'll look ridiculous in this.
Right.
The Christopher Nolan movies always had that problem. They always bordered on ridiculous anytime Batman started talking.
I'm not wearing hockey pads. You'll be in a padded cell forever. I'm pointing the gun, Harvey.
But seeing just the Joker's story alone and the origin of how he became a crazy mastermind, anarchist weirdo, worked pretty much for me. I mean, a couple of more, add some more complexity to the story maybe would have helped. Maybe remove some of the earlier, like, obvious things, but those obvious things, like...
That was a big hurdle for me to get over, was the checkmark stuff.
Once you jump over that hurdle, once they, like, that annoyed me when they revealed that the girlfriend was, when he's in her apartment, and she's like, who are you? Get out. You're that guy from down the hall? And I was like, oh, yeah. But then they show flashbacks, and then I was like, oh, yeah.
It works in Fight Club. It doesn't work so well in this movie because it feels like it's, again, obvious. It's hitting you over the head.
Right. I was like, oh, I got it from when she said, aren't you Arthur from down the hall?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, she was never there.
Yeah.
We didn't need all those flashbacks that showed that she was never there. But the movie itself was pretty solid. I was unexpectedly surprised that I started to enjoy it halfway through, and like you said, it's a different thing. It's a comic book movie mixed with a little character study, and you don't see much of that these days. You're not going to get your Man of Steel action. You're going to get a very, very, very long. Is Joaquin Phoenix in every frame of the movie?
Just about, yeah.
A wonderful role for him, acting his little heart out.
Yeah. It goes right along with his filmography of other movies that are just close-ups of Joaquin Phoenix's face.
So this movie it's such a heartwarmer. I cried 3 times during the course of it.
I don't believe you've ever cried in your life.